The six items of mindfulness in daily practice. The handout you see, the first section. Let's read it together. The dharmas of daily practice. These six items of mindfulness in daily practice come from the Won Buddhist canon. The first section of this scripture, Sotaesan wrote the principal book of Won Buddhism in Byeonsan area, which is considered one of the sacred place in Won Buddhism. And when he wrote the Won Buddhist canon, he asked his followers, in order to create the Dharma. Dharma means the teaching of the enlightened masters. In order to create the Dharma, what direction would you suggest? How can we create the Dharma for the future? A lot of people responded to his questions. But Zhengzan, our second head Dharma master, at the time he was 19-year-old boy, he answered, for the future, the Dharma should fit to our real life. It should fit to our daily life. Our founding master said, you exactly read my mind. The direction or the motto of Won Buddhist teaching, when you first open this scripture, it says, Buddha Dharma is a daily life, and daily life is a Buddha Dharma. For that direction, Sotaesan reformed the traditional Buddhist teaching in order to make it accessible to our daily life. So according to our founding master, what is a dead religion or dead practice? One is the religion or practice which is actually alive or meaningful. A living religion is the religion that does not live our real life. If some practice is separate from our actual life, that is a dead practice. It is a very good news, not just Sotaesan, our founding master, but all contemporary Dharma teachers, not just in States, in Europe as well as in Asia, reform the traditional Buddha Dharma so that the people who are busily engaged in their mundane real life can actually use that in order to enrich their life. Many people ask that, many people say our spiritual practice starts from on the meditation cushion. And many people ask, how can I bring this meditation cushion in our real life? How can we maintain the focused, the peaceful state of mind at work as well as in my house? I think that's a very, very good question. In order to carry out the spiritual practice well, in order to practice very well, first of all, we have to know very clearly what is practice. Probably when I say spiritual practice, each and every person have their own definition of a practice. One day, one very young novice monk, Tibetan novice monk, was highly motivated to get enlightened as soon as possible. And he searched one master meditation teacher and asked, how can I get enlightened and attain complete liberation. And the master said, for that, you have to study and practice the Dharma. Dharma means the teaching of the Buddha in a narrower sense. So, to tell me more specifically, the master did not say that. You just study and practice the Dharma. So he left the monastery, and what is practicing the Dharma? He contemplated. And from the next day, he joined all the service in order to get himself familiar with all kinds of rituals. Tibetan rituals is very, very complicated. It took several years, and he met that teacher again. And after joining service and learning this and that, his mind, the scope of his freedom in his mind started becoming enlarged and enlarged. But he did not think he reached complete liberation. And how can I reach that state of mind when he asked? The teacher replied the same thing. You need to practice the Dharma. And you can go. Then from the next day, he started to read a lot of Buddhist scriptures, which took also for several years to become versed in those Buddhist teachings. And he encountered the master again. The master said the same thing. In order to get enlightened, you need to study and practice the Dharma. And after came back from the monastery, he started to practice a sitting meditation. Probably this is the very path, the best path to attain enlightenment. And he, day in, day out, year in, year out, for many years he practiced sitting meditation. And he started to see into his true self. When he visited the same master, he said the same thing. You need to practice the Dharma. He was very upset, very angry. So he said, what age is practicing the Dharma? He shouted. The teacher said, practicing the Dharma is working with your mind. Sometimes it is studying scripture. Sometimes it is practicing sitting meditation. Sometimes maintaining mindfulness in our daily life. But generally speaking, fundamentally speaking, what is a practice? What is practicing the Dharma? It is working with our own mind. Let me become more specific. How can we work with our mind? In Won Buddhism, as well as in traditional Buddhism, they usually say threefold practice or threefold training, maintaining our mind very calm, peaceful, and focused. That is the part of meditation or spiritual cultivation. And making our mind very wise and bright. That is the Dharma study part, from scripture study or working with the koans or spiritual questions. And utilizing our mind, using our mind in a very righteous, compassionate way. We usually, in Won Buddhism, we usually call that subject mindful choice in action. It starts from observing the precepts or moral code of conduct. So, maintaining our mind very calm and peaceful, spiritual cultivation, that's why we practice meditation, and the wisdom part, maintaining our mind wise and bright, and using our mind in a very proper and smart way. These when people say spiritual practice, you can recall these are threefold practice, threefold training. But when we carry out the threefold practice, there are two paths. One is the practice in stillness. Some translation has it that practice at rest. For example, when you practice sitting meditation in stillness, it is in that category. Or the other path is the practice in action. You can cultivate your spirit or maintain the meditative state of mind while you are involved in daily activities. Meditation in action. Our founding master said, religious orders in the past emphasized practice only in quietness because they thought mundane work and the spiritual practice were incompatible. Consequently, some renounced their families, spending their entire lives in remote mountains, while some seeking after truth were absorbed in reading scriptures to such an extent that they did not even notice when the rain washed away the grain drying in the yard. How could this be integrated way of study and practice? Therefore, we should not regard practice and the mundane work as two separate entities. Successful study and practice is realized through successful mundane work, and successful mundane work leads to successful spiritual practice, so that together they enable you to attain the three great powers in between motion and quietness. I bid you to follow constantly the practice of motion and quietness. Around 20 years ago, the Iksan is the city where the current Won Buddhist headquarters is located. A quarter of the Iksan city, more than probably 15-20 blocks were exploded. It was blown up completely because of the accidents, some highly explosive material blown up at the main train station. The train station crew who was in charge of the freight unit, that freight train, that car, when he entered that unit, it was too dark, even though there was electricity on. He lighted the candle. When he left that unit, he forgot to put out the candle. The candle got completely melted, and the surrounding some wood material caught the fire and spread to that highly explosive thing. A lot of people died because of the accident. Why do you think that kind of a disaster happened? It started by a very small mindfulness. He simply forgot to put out the candle. But the consequence was huge. A lot of forest fire was caused by some mindlessly throwing some cigarette butts. It burned a lot of forest, claiming lots of lives sometimes. So my teacher told me, what is the most dreadful thing? What is the most scary thing in our life? It is a mindfulness, inattention, negligence. It is something that we needed to be very afraid of. What is the most precious thing, valuable thing in our life? It is attention or mindfulness. Our success and failure many times, not just in our spiritual practice area, but at our work, in in our relationships with many people. Many times it just depends on our mindfulness practice. When I first played tennis, when I was in junior high, the coach, I was very tense. The coach told me, you do not have to hold the grip that tight all the time. Only when the ball hit the racket, you can hold the racket very tight. Mindfulness is a very good thing. We cannot deny that. But how can we mindful in each and every item for the whole day? It exhausts us. It does not work, first of all. But for several areas, in several very important parts, we needed to be mindful. So our founding master picked up 6 items of mindfulness. If you are mindful in these 6 items, everything will be followed. Why don't you read the first one, the item number 1, or together? 1. In all your actions, be mindful our thoughts. Okay. Be mindful to make choices with sound thoughts. Our life is full of choices. It is not just salad or soup. Think about your friends or spouse, your occupation. That's what we choose. Depending on our choice, our life has been changed a lot. Ultimately, why we practice sitting meditation or study scriptures, the spiritual cultivation part, as well as the Dharma study or the wisdom part, is ultimately for the mindful choice in action. We don't practice for the sake of a practice. So in our scripture, it reads in this way: even if you have gained the power of cultivation, means spiritual cultivation, that comes from cultivating the spirit and the mind or meditation, and the power of inquiry. Inquiry means here, Dharma study. The power of inquiry that comes from scripture study and working with the Koan, cultivation and inquiry will come to naught and will hardly gain any real efficacy. If we cannot put them into practice in actual operations, this would be like a tree that has a good trunk, branches, flowers, and leaves, but that bears no fruit. So ultimately, mindful choice in action is what matters eventually. When you make a choice, sometimes we rely on it always relies on our thought, on our judgments or decision. That thought or judgment is sometimes something that we contemplated for a long time. Sometimes that's something that pops up in your mind and we just make a decision. Like, I'd like to buy a Sony laptop or a Dell laptop. Think about that. When do we make very improper choices, unwise choice? When we recall our past, when our mind is not stable, when we are very angry, upset, at the time, the choice that we make is many times very much misleading and wrong. So in order to make a very wise choice, what comes first is having a peaceful and stable state of mind. So this first item says, be mindful to make choice with a sound thought. With a sound thought. Sound is the translation of the Korean word onjan. it means balanced, unbiased, unprejudiced, wholesome, something like that. So in order to make a very wise choice, we need to bring our mind to oppose as much as possible by whatever path, whether it's through sitting meditation or the second thing, the second item, before engaging in all actions, observe the circumstances and be mindful to study in advance. The successful persons are the ones who prepared a lot well in advance time. The more difficult, the more greater the task, the more time we have to spend for its preparation. When it comes to the Shakyamuni Buddha's case, the scripture says he practiced for 500 lives to attain the ultimate supreme enlightenment. So, are you familiar with the name Deng Xiaoping? Deng Xiaoping. I'm not sure I pronounced it correctly. Along with Mao, he carried out the communist revolution. The Mao is the first generation. Deng Xiaoping, he just said that the architect of the new modern China, the China with the socialism with the Chinese characteristic and so on. During the Cultural Revolution, he was purged, and he was not allowed to live in a small house in a rural area. He had led a very hectic life in the political area. But he did not idly spend his time for many years. Even though he was in exile, he prepared all the ideologies, how to reform the China into modern ecology, modern country with a solid communist idea, but with a Chinese characteristic. He prepared when he had free time. Our third head Dharma master, on the first year of each and every year, the head Dharma master issue a New Year message for the Won Buddhism, as well as for people in general. Just one page Dharma words. But from fall, from usually September or October, he put that Dharma word on the wall in his study. From time to time, he constantly contemplated that and constantly polished that again and again. So in order to prepare great things, preparation. If you think your meditation does not progress as you had expected, you have to contemplate about that. The other items I will continue next time, number 3. And bring that 6 items of mindfulness in your house and meditate on that. Thank you.